Hi, welcome to the Arsenal Ramble, where today we're going to be going into detail about the World Cup so far. Today it's the 26th of November, sort of early evening time. So I think the Denmark-France game's going on as we speak. So all the stuff we're discussing is prior to that game. Okay, so as always, joined by Dom. How's it going, mate? How are you enjoying the World Cup so far?
Yeah, I've really enjoyed the World Cup so far this week. Well, I say that, but I've had to work for pretty much every England game and every game of importance that I really wanted to watch.
Oh, that's annoying.
So it's kind of frustrating, but I wasn't too excited for this World Cup before it started with all of the noise and nonsense that was going on, and the fact that it's a Winter World Cup, coupled with the fact that I wasn't able to properly watch them
Yeah,
because I was at work, it didn't really get me too excited for it. But as soon as the first ball was kicked in the first game, it was just like, yeah, everything gets forgotten and people just focus on football, and
yeah,
it just shows you that football is a universal language. Everybody enjoys it, and everyone forgets everything else when they start to
yeah.
play.
I know what you mean. Yeah, it's been a bit of a slow burner for me too. I've conveniently took a few home working days with work, so I could try and catch some of the England games and some of the other fixtures that sort of took my fancy. But yeah, it's definitely started to get going a bit more now. Now some of there's been upsets and there's been sort of big high scoring games and things like that. It's definitely started to get my interest, get my juices flowing a bit more.
Yeah, well, saying that, it did start with quite a few nil-nils this
Yeah,
week, didn't it? And it almost had the kind of flavour that nobody wants to lose the first game, which I understand because a loss in the first game, it's so bad because it's not just the fact that you're not getting any points, it's the fact that there's only three games. And if you're gifting one of the three other teams 3 points, it does make it a mountain to climb to try and
mm,
then get out of the group because you're depending on other teams getting certain results. You can't then just win the group outright yourself.
yeah,
So there's been so many nil-nils, a lot of negative football. But then, yeah, as you say, we've seen a few upsets, probably most notably Argentina and Japan. And was it? Yeah, no, Argentina lost to Saudi Arabia, wasn't it?
that was it. Yeah.
And then Germany lost to Japan.
Yeah, those are the two biggies, I would say. Yeah, yeah. I think there's been some. I mean, like you touched upon it. It's the first game of the group stage, so teams are a bit more cautious with their approach. And I think even with the Brazil game, for example, they were very cautious all throughout the game, and it was only when they got that first goal that they really started to push for the second, and they just looked like they were in cruise control for the last 30 minutes of the game. Um, I think, yeah, it's just making sure that they get the 3 points on the board early game.
And talking about a team that got 3 points on the board early game, England, our team, they did all right in the first game, didn't they?
Yeah, they did. Saka, most notably, was given the man of the match. I would say thoroughly deserved. He did have an absolute brilliant game out on the wing. He really caused them problems all match. It's a shame that we didn't get to see our other Arsenal players, but you'd have to sort of agree that they're probably not high up in Southgate's pecking order at the minute.
Yeah, and Southgate, he knows what he likes and he likes what he knows, and he will pick whoever he wants,
Mm.
not dependent on form or anything or skill. Sometimes
Yeah.
he will pick who he wants, and yes, Saka was great. Really, I'm glad that he played right wing because there was some murmurs that they were going to play him at left wing back, which he's played at for England and Arsenal a very long time ago. He played for Arsenal
Yeah.
at left wing back, but he's so much more effective in the right wing position. And I think it's great to see that other fans are now seeing how effective he can be in that position.
Yeah, it'd be such a waste of his talents if they put him at left wing back. We saw that in those is it National League or Nations League games? I can't
The
remember.
National League's like League 5 or something.
Whatever that
May as well be.
Yeah, whatever that glorified friendly tournament is. When they tried it in that it really did not work. And yeah, he played really, really good. And you'd like to think he's sort of one of the first names on the team sheet. But another thing in relation to the team sheet that seemed to cause a bit of controversy on social media was around Phil Foden not starting out on the left, or maybe even in Bukayo Saka's place. What were your thoughts on that?
Well, I, for one, I really like Phil Foden, and I think he should be starting. Not over Saka. I think Saka's got to be in the team. He's got to be first, if not second name on the team sheet.
Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, I'd say Phil Foden over Sterling, or maybe even over Mount. I think Mount's more effective than Sterling, so probably over Sterling on the left. But yeah, I can see why people are getting frustrated because he's been so effective for City this season and last season, and he's one of those players he's a great player to. To be fair, he can be an impact player as well, so maybe that's in Southgate's thoughts. But then you'd think maybe Sterling can come on when they've got heavy legs and running behind because he's a bit of a pace merchant himself, isn't he? And there's not really much more to Sterling's game. He's not the best finisher, although he did finish quite well. He did take his goal quite well.
He did, but at a period when we were cruising,
exactly,
pressure was off.
No pressure, easy finish, really.
Yeah, it is one that I struggle to understand his thought process over. I agree with what you were saying around Mount. Although maybe one step further, I think that maybe Foden could play in that position and be that, because he can drive and drive at defenders with the ball. And Mount, for me, he's not sort of a creative midfield. He's playing the Odegaard role, let's be honest, in that 4-3-3 system that England are playing. He needs to be creative, and he needs to be popping up in areas where he can cause the opposition problems, and he's not doing that. And I just wonder whether someone like Foden, maybe even Grealish to a degree, could provide that. I definitely wouldn't be playing him in Saka's spot, but I could also understand maybe getting him out there in Sterling's position as well, because that is his natural position. Obviously, that's what he plays for City. He's not really played that position as in a more of a midfield attacking midfielder position. He's not really played that for City, so yeah, I guess I can understand to a degree why he wouldn't opt for that. But having said that, Mount doesn't play that position really for Chelsea either. So it's a tough one, but I don't think he's got it quite right yet. Anyway,
no, I don't really understand a lot of Southgate's decisions that he makes, but I feel like we kind of almost Arteta-esque. We have to trust in the process because he's proven with previous results how he got to a semi-final and then a final. He clearly does know what he's doing, but it's easy for us as fans to see that you kind of overrate the player that's not playing when you don't play well.
Yeah.
And we always do that as football fans. We say if we're losing and there's a player that's on the bench that potentially might have been a better fit, we'd say, oh, well, if they were playing, we wouldn't be losing.
Yeah.
But who's to say that if they were playing, we might still be losing?
I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, it's like with Maguire. He's actually a very, very good defender when the ball's coming in the box aerially. He is huge. He doesn't miss headers. He doesn't lose jewels, as Arteta would say. But when it comes to sort of when the ball's on the floor and he's so slow on the turn and he's so flat-footed that he gets caught so often. So he's got his pros and his cons, but we don't really have many other options. Eric Dyer, no thanks. But Ben White, you could argue, deserves a chance. The only thing is he's not played centre back for Arsenal this year, so whether that's a position that you're going to be trusted in a major tournament with when you've not played it all year for your club is probably another story.
Yeah, and I guess that's something else where people could potentially get onto Southgate's back if he plays a player which is supposedly out of position from what he's played all season, and then they perform badly.
Yeah,
then he's
rinsed.
going to get absolutely rinsed, isn't he? And to be fair to Southgate, he's playing the players which have brought him so much success in the past. And as it stands, we are top of the group. I know it seems almost cataclysmic that we didn't beat the USA, but we didn't lose, which was something else that I wanted to discuss as well, because during that game, there was, I think it was towards the 70th minute or so, everyone was screaming out for Phil Foden to come onto the pitch to try and, put the game into our favour and maybe win the game. And he brought on Jordan Henderson instead. And everyone I saw on social media, everyone was going crazy saying, why has he brought on Jordan Henderson? He's not going to get his goal. He's not going to make us more of an attacking force. But in retrospect, if you to watch the game back, you'd see that the USA were all over us.
They were the better team.
For the 10 minutes previous to that substitution, the USA were having chance after chance, corner after corner, and we're under the cosh, and we were in danger of losing the game. And a loss at that point would put us, we would not be in a very good position going to the third game, because we would have to win that game, or at least depend on other results. So Southgate knew if we were to draw that game, then I think it's Wales have to beat us by 4 goals to be able to progress. So for us to progress, we need to not lose to Wales by 4 goals, which you think is easily doable.
Of course.
And then it's just a roll of the dice on whether you get Ecuador or Netherlands. But if you want to win the World Cup, you've got to beat the best teams, right?
Exactly.
So he made the substitution for Henderson. And to be fair, I feel like we gained a bit more control in midfield after then. We didn't create much, but we didn't concede possession much either. And I think he just saw the game out.
Yeah, no, I do agree, actually. It was a smart substitution. He was thinking proactively. He wasn't thinking about that game. He wasn't thinking about trying to necessarily win that game. Otherwise, you'd be bringing on Phil Foden and maybe more attacking players. I think he did bring on Rashford sort of simultaneously as well for Sterling. So he still put fresh legs up top in the hope that we could snatch a goal. But I have to give it to the USA. They if anyone was deserving of anything out of that game, it was them.
Still never beaten them in the World Cup.
Really?
We've never beaten the USA in the World Cup, albeit they've not qualified for the World Cup a lot of times. But when we have played them, we've never actually beaten them in a World Cup.
Wow.
Which is a crazy stat.
I can't imagine we've come up against them too often, to be fair. But still, it's quite a strange stat considering, we're the home of football, England.
You don't usually associate USA with having a great soccer team, do you? But to be fair to the USA, they've got quite a few good young players that are coming through the ranks, and that's accompanied with a lot of experienced players that play for big clubs.
Yeah, they've gone with a lot of European talent this tournament, whereas in the past they've gone with their the MLS stars, if you will.
Yeah. Different gravy, isn't it?
It is, yeah. They do look a much stronger team. And I'm kind of glad, actually, that they're going to be the host nation next time for the World Cup, because it's sort of that's where the World Cup should be going. It should be going to nations where football is growing and there's a spark already there, and it's going to hopefully ignite that and get the next generation of footballers playing, for their under 10s football team, just as an example.
Yeah, all the soccer moms out.
Yeah. And it essentially inspires them to to go that next step.
Yeah, because there is a lot of talent that actually comes from the USA. So it players like is it Brennan Harrison plays for Leeds, isn't he?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
Weston McKennie, he was a
Juventus, isn't he?
yeah, Juventus, and Mensah, he was a bit of a menace. He was all over us really in the midfield, wasn't he? So yeah, they've got some great players coming through, and it's nice to see the guys over the pond doing so well,
Yeah,
better than they usually do. And I think if I was to put my money on anyone else from this group to qualify, it would be USA now. Even though Iran have got more points, I feel like if USA beat Iran, which I expect that they will do,
yeah.
then they'll progress. So
I hope they do. There's something I like about that team. I think they learned their lesson in the first game where they went out a bit. They went out too strong. They sort of burnt themselves out. So in that second half, they couldn't keep up with Wales. And they learned their lesson. They just sort of played a bit more pragmatic against England, and it worked. So yeah, hats off to them.
And another thing I was going to add about the England results so far is that England actually drew one of the games in the last Euros, and we progressed all the way to the final. So it's not time to get to panic stations
No.
just yet.
Oh God, no.
We can do the business against Wales on, is it Tuesday? On Tuesday,
Yeah, Tuesday,
which I am coincidentally working again.
Wow.
I'm
at the pub.
Which is unfortunate. But yeah, we can do the business against Wales, and then we'll progress and hopefully have. I think I was looking at the tournament tree, and if you're going on seeded teams, it's either Ecuador or Netherlands, and then it is
Senegal into it, maybe potentially.
No,
Oh.
no. I think it was France, and then Argentina.
Oh, I thought that was in the quarters.
I was going up the tree, if you see what I mean.
Yeah.
So yeah, it won't be an easy ride. Well, it might be Saudi Arabia and not Argentina, to be honest. But it it won't be an easy ride up to the final. And if we do end up winning the World Cup, it will be absolutely deserved.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's hard to sort of look into the potential games because every game is a stumbling block. You know.
Yeah, you don't know what's going to happen, do you?
You don't know what's going to happen. We're not playing particularly well as it is. I don't want to sort of bring the mood down with England, but we're just not the same. They're not the same team as previous tournaments, in my opinion. There's just there's something missing at the minute, and let's hope that Southgate can find it.
Yeah, I'd say the thing that's missing is probably a decent manager that knows how to play all his cards right. But
do you think he knows that? Do you think he knows that this is possibly his last tournament, and he's maybe playing it a bit safer?
I don't know.
Just his lineups are sort of reflective of knowing that.
Yeah, I guess that could play a part in it, and maybe he doesn't want to take too many risks because he knows what has worked for him in previous tournaments. Yeah. He wants to get as far as he can to at least go out on a fairly positive note, knowing that it's more than likely to be his last tournament for England.
Yeah, for example, like playing all like Spain do. They play Pedri and they play what's the other young lad called in midfield that won the young player?
Is it Gavi?
Gavi, that's it, for Barcelona. They play those two in midfield. Combat, what are they both 19, 18, something like that?
Late teens.
So, they've got much more experienced players in the middle, but they've opted to go with youth. And look at the scoreline for their game. Yeah, they absolutely. I can't remember who they played.
Costa Rica.
Yeah.
To be fair, Costa Rica were awful, but then saying that, there's been a lot of teams which you'd expect to beat certain other teams, which hasn't happened. So I do think that you've got to really keep yourself well drilled as a team when the opponent that you're playing isn't up to scratch, because it is easy to lose concentration and then not score and then concede, and then it very quickly becomes you're trying to claw back some pride. But
I know what you're saying.
So I was going to ask you, which team in the World Cup so far do you think has looked the most impressive?
Most impressive. Well, I mean, I did like Spain actually. I really did like the young talent that they have, and how well they play. I did like Brazil. I mean, I mentioned it earlier how they were very patient um, with the game. Frustrating to see Richarlison score, but the second goal in particular was a very, very well taken goal. So
yeah. The thing is, even as an Arsenal fan, you've kind of got to take your hat off and be like, yeah, that was a brilliant goal, wasn't it?
And he doesn't do that for Tottenham anyway. So.
Yeah, so that's fine. He can do as much. In fact, get it out of his system now. He can score as many goals as he wants. He can get the golden boot of the World Cup and then come back and just never score again for the rest of the season, and I'll be happy.
I think I tweeted something like, how is Richarlison playing in this Brazil team ahead of Jesus? And then 10 minutes later, he does that, and I'm like, oh.
Delete.
Yeah, delete tweets.
Yeah, it's one of the, and as an Arsenal fan, you are frustrated when you see the lineup because you're thinking, Jesus, although he's not scored a hatful this season for Arsenal, you expect him with his work rate and his desire and his passion. You expect him to be starting that game in front of Richarlison, who's not even been doing that great for Spurs. But you see Richarlison start the team sheet, and then you realise that Brazil have always had this kind of setup where they like to have a focal point almost up front, someone that's going to stay in the box, and then they've got all the flair players around. So you've got your Neymar, Vinicius Jr., players like that are dotting around, and then Richarlison just has to stay on the centre spot, Pano spot, sorry, and that's what he did twice for both goals. So
it's so true. Can you remember the player called Fred? Not the Fred at Man United, but there was a previous Fred.
Yeah,
he was basically that player for them all them years ago. He wasn't a particularly good footballer either. He was just that focal point they needed up top to score goals, and he did do that, to be fair. But he wasn't, a prolific European League player. I think he even played in Brazil, in the Brazil leagues, towards the end of his career. Anyway, but yeah, I know exactly what you mean by that. They like a sort of a bigger profile centre forward.
Yeah, when you've got all of that flair and talent around, all the creativeness, if that's a word, creative ability around him on the wings and in Cam, that you just need someone just stand there on the centre spot. We'll get the ball to you.
Would you rather Jesus be playing and maybe scoring and obviously, but with that comes fatigue potentially later on when Premier League football returns, or would you rather Richarlison be playing and him getting a bit of a rest?
It's a difficult one because he's not been scoring for Arsenal. So a side of me thinks that if he comes on, he gets a hat trick or he has a storm of a tournament, he's going to come back full of confidence. And when you're full of confidence and you're happy, you're not feeling tired, are you? You don't get heavy legs or anything like that when you're elated. And you could come back on fire and maybe bring that back into his Arsenal form. However, saying that, with playing comes the risk of injury. Also comes the risk of him not playing well, which is a potential because you're going up against world-class opponents.
Yeah, not his confidence in that. Yeah,
exactly. So it could also, it's a double-edged sword. It could be a confidence knock and then comes back with his tail between his legs.
Yeah.
So, but I think footballers, they want to play. To be honest, they don't really care about it. They just want to play. And if they score, it's a bonus. So I think the fact that he has been benched would be worse for his confidence than him playing and not playing well.
I have seen as well that Neymar may have actually injured his ankle.
Oh, okay.
And could be out for a couple of games. So it might actually give a bit more game time to someone like Jesus and Martinelli, potentially. Yeah. The only issue is they've got so much wealth of attacking talent in that squad that it could be Anthony, it could be Vinicius Jr. Instead.
Rafinha on the right as well.
Yeah, although I don't think Rafinha really had a very good game. So.
No, he started off quite brightly. You can tell he's absolutely rapid down the right, but his finishing ability, it's not what you saw at Leeds last season, is it?
No, and his crossing as well, it was awful. He's not on good form for Barcelona, is he? So no, you could see that.
I was actually, I didn't think that he would start this game. No. I would have had Vinicius Jr. and Neymar played Cam, didn't he? So I'd have Vinicius Jr. on the basically I'd have Martinelli and Vinicius Junior on the wings with Neymar behind, and they can go on either wing. To be honest,
I thought Martinelli played really well when he came on. He only had a little cameo, obviously, but with the time that he had, he really injected a lot of pace and dynamism into their attack. He was absolutely storming it down that left hand side. Unlucky not to get an assist, actually.
Yeah. So, well, we've just been talking about them, but are you saying which team did you say was your
Spain or Brazil? Yeah,
Spain
I went
or
on a
Brazil.
bit of a tangent. Sorry,
it's all right. No. So my one would have been Brazil, and that was just because of the caliber of opponent that they were playing against. I think of all the teams that have played so far, for the top teams, you'd say like the top 6 teams, I think Serbia have been the toughest opponent that any of the top 6 teams have played against.
They were good defensively, to be fair, yeah.
Yeah, I think they're one of the highest seeded teams as well that the top few opponents have played against.
Right.
And Brazil, they kind of, they defended well, but they were patient, and you could tell that Brazil were the better team, and they got the 2-0 scoreline, and they breezed past them in the end. So I'd say Brazil have looked the most impressive. I'd also give a shout out to France, because I think they're one of the only top teams that have gone behind in the game to then win comfortably 4-1 against Australia, which is a game which they should be winning.
Yeah.
But it shows you the character of a team to go behind and then come back and win comfortably.
Yeah.
So those are my two. I would say Spain have looked scary as well, scarily efficient in their finishing. But as you say, sometimes when you go 2 or 3 goals up against a team like Costa Rica, then it just becomes a training match, and you just keep scoring for fun, don't you?
Yeah. Okay, I think that brings the first half to an end. We're going to have a little break now, and then we're going to discuss a little more around some of the other Arsenal players at the World Cup, like Tomiyasu, for example, and then we'll go into the Q&A. Okay, see you in part 2. Welcome back to the second part of the Arsenal Ramble, where we continue to ramble on about the Arsenal / the World Cup.
Or the Arsenal players that are in the World Cup, because that's what we're going to talk about next.
Yeah, that's it.
So I think we've got 9 players that have gone to the World Cup, 8 or 9 players. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into how they've performed so far. So should we start with the England boys? Well, in inverted commas, England boy.
Yeah. I mean, it's to be expected, really, with Ramsdale. He kind of is second choice, isn't he? Well, who knows? He could even be third choice, but I'd like to think not.
Which is a shame, really, because he really brings a progressive nature to the team when he plays for Arsenal. He's so good with the ball at his feet. He can pick someone like Saka out on the right-hand side from goal kicks and from recycling the ball. And Pickford does seem to he goes long quite a lot, doesn't he?
Yeah,
but not to anyone in particular. He just kind of leathers it away.
I think it just goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's one of his trusty players. Pickford is for Southgate, and they'll continue to stick with him. But I think it's inevitable at some point Ramsdale will take that number 1 spot. It's just when, really.
Yeah, and to be fair to Pickford, he's always played well in an England shirt, and he conceded 2 against Iran, but I think the concentration had already gone. We'd already scored 5 by the time we scored 4 by the time they scored the first, and then it was 6 by the time they'd scored the second.
Yeah.
So concentration had gone, and I don't think either goal was really his fault. I think the first one was Maguire's fault, even though he had a good game.
Yeah, very flat-footed.
So I think Pickford plays well for England, but he's not as progressive as Ramsdale. So I would like to see him play, but and then same goes for Ben White. I really wish he was playing for us, but
I was just in that game against USA. Trippier's link up with Saka was just non-existent. That they were not on the same wavelengths. There was a lot of times where Saka was just in Saka's space. Trippier was, and it was almost forcing Saka to just drift around into no man's land, and it was really frustrating knowing that we've got Ben White on the bench, who's a better defender, and he's actually better suited to Saka's play style on the right. So I really do hope that we can somehow integrate White into the team.
Yeah, and I know it probably is an Arsenal bias
Yeah,
wanting Ben White in the team, but
maybe.
it's one of those things where if you bring on partnerships from clubs into the national squad, you get certain automatisms that can then play out. So, say Ben White with Saka, they know where each other are going to be at all times because they play with each other every single week. They train with each other every single week.
Yeah.
So Saka knows when Ben White's going to make an overlapping run, or he knows when to tuck in, and vice versa. And then
Mm.
you've got, and to be fair, not even just an Arsenal bias. You've got other partnerships like Foden and Grealish. They play together. Maybe we should start with those two, or even Shaw and Rashford on the left hand side.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You've got all these little partnerships which play in their clubs teams.
Yeah.
So why not take advantage of that?
Yeah, I would be doing that 100%.
It's something that like Germany have done for many years, and the Bayern Munich team when they had so many German nationals that all played for them. They played together every week. They had those partnerships, and that's why they look so effective on the
Yeah.
international stage. Same with Spain, where pretty much all of the team played for either Real Madrid or Barcelona.
Yeah.
So we should really be trying to take advantage of that, because all of our players play for different teams. I'm not saying that you have to have like the whole Arsenal squad or the whole Man City squad in the team for us to be effective, but little partnerships just around the pitch would
Yeah.
really help give us that edge.
Do you think Ben White will potentially get more minutes in this tournament, or do you think he's just one of the squad players and he's unlikely to get a kick?
I hope so, but I think that Kieran Trippier is one of he. Even when we had Alexander Arnold knocking on the door and we had Carl Walker knocking on the door, Kieran Trippier's always been near the top of the tree for Gareth Southgate. He's one of his most experienced players. And to be fair to him, he does usually play well. He's usually quite solid. But I feel against the USA, him and Saka just weren't gelling.
No.
And that is what's important. If you're going to try and score goals when you go forward, you need to have the same wavelength down the same side.
Yeah. Shaw didn't have a very good game either. I wonder whether we could move Trippier out onto the left because he has done that in the past, and then get White in potentially.
Yeah.
It's an option.
Yeah. But it's one of those things because Shaw looked really good in the first game.
Yeah.
I feel like most of our attacking threat was down the left hand side and was from Shaw cutting the ball back. So maybe it's just a different team for different games kind of thing.
Yeah, he needs to be more pragmatic, I think, Southgate. And that's was one of his reasons for not playing Foden, because he didn't think it was a game that was suited to Foden, but I think most people would argue it was. So, it's hard to really understand his thought process at times.
Yeah. So going on to our third Englishman that
Yeah.
played, Bukayo Saka, how do you sum up his game so far?
Well, it's a little bit night and day, actually, to be fair, with his first game against Iran. As I said earlier in the pod, he was our man of the match. Really, really good performance. He was as soon as he got the ball, he was looking to go forwards. And that's what we love about Saka, because he's always direct and he causes chaos. But in the game against the USA, he really struggled. I think a couple of times he would either lose the ball, he would get tackled, he would, his directness wasn't working. And each time that happened, you could see his confidence get knocked and knocked and knocked to the point where by the time it was, in this early second half, he was just sort of playing safe passes. I think that's how I read it anyway. His confidence was not high for that specific game, and he was just becoming a bit ineffective. I hate to say it because I do think he's one of our better players, but it was just a game that USA managed to nullify Saka in. So,
And that's the thing with Saka is his whole game is taking on players, getting the ball in the half turn, spinning the players, and then going either outside of them, inside of them. And as soon as his confidence is knocked, Well, you don't usually see it for Arsenal because he
No.
doesn't usually get his confidence knocked.
Yeah.
But if he gets marked out of a game, he does tend to play a bit more safe.
Tyler
And
Adams literally was glued to him.
yeah,
So
and could there be a part of it being that the last time he was on the big stage for England, he had the whole pressure of the nation on his shoulders? He might not want to make that mistake again. So
well,
he does tend to play a bit more safe, where he's got the freedom with Arsenal that he knows, he plays with these players every week. If he makes a mistake, then he knows that Ben White's going to be there and uh, retrieve the ball back for him. But
mm,
he might be thinking in the back of his mind, if he doesn't do something here, or if he gets tackled and
yeah.
it gets turned over and USA score, that he's going to get so much abuse again.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think also in the back of his mind is there's that much attacking talent in the squad that one little bad performance could mean that his starting place is lost as well.
Mm,
Maybe. So you could tell when he came off for Grealish. I think it was Grealish. He did look a bit frustrated coming off, but you know, players are going to have these games. It's inevitable. All the best players do. It wasn't one of his better ones, but I've got no doubt that he's going to have better games for England in this tournament.
Well, okay. Well, going on to the player that Saka was trying to score against, Matt Turner.
Yeah,
Yeah, he had a pretty good game against England, didn't he?
yeah, really good. It was nice to see him. I mean, we've obviously seen him in the Europa League for Arsenal and little cameos here and there, but it was nice to see him sort of objectively in a different team. I don't know why. It just sort of. I've always been a little bit worried about Turner because he just looks a very unorthodox style keeper. It
Mm.
doesn't sort of give you that confidence that you like to have in a keeper. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. I know what you mean.
sorry.
No. Can you carry on?
I was just saying, but in this game, he did really command his box. His distribution was really, really good.
Mm.
And that's two things I think when we signed him that were sort of notably his negatives, his distribution, and
Yeah.
he was known for being a good shot stopper.
Yeah.
But I was really quite impressed actually. So to have him as our second choice is looking like a bit of good recruitment.
I was just about to say he's got all the ingredients of being a perfect second string keeper,
Yeah,
because you don't want a keeper to be so good. Like when we had Burn Leno and Ramsdale, you don't want a keeper of such high quality that
no,
they're getting frustrated and they're not getting the chances that they deserve.
yeah,
But you don't want a second string keeper who, when they're called upon, are dreadful. Like when
yeah.
we had Runason that came on and
Gosh,
was absolutely shocking
God.
against Man City, was it? Where he just kind of fumbled it into his own
He
net.
just looked like he just
Like
come
a
out of the
kid.
crowd.
Yeah.
Like just a fan out of the crowd.
Get some gloves on, get on
Yeah.
the pitch. So I think, he's perfect to have at Arsenal. I think he's an international keeper. He's shown that he can be a good shot stopper. He didn't quite look so assured with the ball at his feet, distribution wise, and when he had pressure put on him, he managed to get the ball away, but not
Yeah.
quite as
Not as quick as other keepers would.
not quite like Ramsdale would. But
Yeah.
I'm happy he's in our team, and overall, I think he had a pretty good performance against England.
Yeah, he's put himself out to the world now as well. Like, because a lot of fans, I should say, probably wouldn't even know who he is.
Yeah.
So he's now gone and shown everyone that
Yeah, I did notice that every time he was in the picture or he made a save, it was like, yes, the Arsenal player, Matt Turner, as if people didn't know who he was. But yeah. So going on to another one of our players who actually didn't start the game, William Saliba, one of our best players this season.
Yeah.
Why the hell is he not starting?
Before the tournament, I was thinking he'd be starting and he'd be making a real name for himself. I think I even said it on one of the podcasts. How I thought that after this tournament finishes, we'd be having to almost double it. Like, worried about his contract basically because his value would have gone up that much. But yeah, he's not playing, and France have taken a lot of centre backs to this tournament. To be fair, I think the game's currently playing at the minute, but even Koundé is playing right now for them, and he can't seem to get on. I'm hoping he comes on in this game at some point, but we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, and we can't really talk about his performance if he's not performing or playing. So
No, it's just a shame, yeah, that he's not getting any minutes.
yeah, well, another player who also didn't start for for his national team was Tomiyasu, but he came on at half time and he had a bit of a storm of a second half, didn't he?
Tomiyasu, yeah, really made a difference for Japan. For some strange reason, he didn't start. I'm not really sure on the reasons why. But yeah, he made some really, really good clearances and some really, really good blocks for Japan because it was crunch time towards the end of that match where they were trying to hang on to their 2-1 win. And he was a big part of keeping that lead.
One of the biggest shock results of the tournament so far, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
So Martinelli and Jesus also both didn't start. It's a bit of a theme coming here. I think what teams need to realise is if you start your Arsenal players, then you're going to win more games. But so yeah, Jesus and Martinelli, they both came off the bench though, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, we've touched on it a little bit earlier, but yeah, I think they both made pretty good impacts with the limited time that they had. Maybe with Neymar's injury, they can get a bit more game time, but we'll have to wait and see on that one.
Yeah, and then just to round up, our boys in the middle, Xhaka and Partey, both played well for their respective international teams, didn't they?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't really get a chance to see these games, so it's hard for me to comment. But from what I've heard, especially with Xhaka, he did put in a pretty good performance.
Yeah, and one thing that people said about Granit Xhaka, especially after the last Euros, is how come he always plays so well for Switzerland, but he doesn't play well for Arsenal? And it was a positional thing. And then we're seeing now that we're reaping the rewards from him repositioning, Arteta repositioning him, because he's so much more effective at going forward than he is as a left back when he used to get thrown at left back or a centre defensive mid. So yeah, if he's playing how he plays for Arsenal, then he's going to have a good tournament.
Yeah, no, it's great to see him putting these performances in for both club and country.
Yeah. So we've got a couple of questions here.
Okay.
The first one is from Matt Lewis, who is at Matt Lewis Drums, and it is: should Arsenal go for Jude Bellingham?
Well, you've got to put your hat in the ring, haven't you?
Absolutely.
You know, he's generational talent, and yeah, he really would suit our system. Actually,
He'd fit in well, wouldn't he?
Yeah, he'd fit in well in that like we were just talking about, Xhaka role. He's a physical player as well, which not a lot of people attribute to Jude Bellingham, but I think he would be perfect for that midfield role. It's just whether we can entice him when the other clubs like Real Madrid and whatnot are sniffing around.
Do you think that if Bellingham was to come into the Arsenal squad, that Xhaka would make way for him? Or would Xhaka stick around and he maybe be the understudy and just rotate? Or do you think there is space for Bellingham in the team?
It's a tough one with that, because I remember when we were linked with Tielemans, and a lot of fans were saying that he would be a Xhaka replacement, and then a lot of journalists said, well, Xhaka's not going to be a replacement. He's either starting or he leaves, and that's how the Roma links started. You know, if you can remember. So yeah, I mean that's a tough one. But when we're playing Champions League football, we're going to be needing bigger squads, and you'd like to think Xhaka would be able to respect that. But you know, every footballer is different. If he wasn't prepared, then maybe it would be time to move on.
Yeah, and he's flirted with the idea of leaving. I think it was Roma that wanted him last season.
Yeah.
And he's got over the age of 30 now. How is he 31?
30, yeah, I think he's 31.
So he's coming into the latter stages of his career anyway.
Yeah.
So
it could be the perfect time.
It could be the perfect time to get someone like Bellingham in, and he'd come with a hefty price tag. But you know that Dortmund are a team that would sell because that's their whole model. They bring through these young talents, and then they have to make money because they're a club that can't hold on to these talents forever, like Haaland, for example.
Yeah.
So he would, I think, for the right price, he would be obtainable, and we'd have to put a hat in the ring.
And Arsenal are getting to that point where Liverpool were, where before they signed Van Dijk and Alisson, they were a good team, but they just needed that little injection of pure quality.
Yeah.
And they had to spend big. I mean, they spent 70 odd million on Van Dijk and something similar for Alisson. It's a huge chunk of money, but the class that brought that squad instantly elevated them to be title contenders.
Oh yeah, it was absolutely worth the money, wasn't it?
So maybe that's now where we are. We need that world class talent.
Yeah. So I've got another question here. It's more of a England question from Joe Fry, who's at Joe Fry 81. So, would you make any changes for the starting 11 for the Wales game? For me, I'd start Grealish over Sterling, Foden instead of Mount, and Ben White in for Trippier to get a bit better link up with Bukayo Saka.
Yeah.
So I think what he's trying to say is, would you make any changes for the Wales game? And if you would, what changes would they be?
I definitely would be having Foden in for Sterling, without a doubt. But I'm assuming Joe meant Grealish for Sterling and Foden for Mount. And I'm not sure whether that would be... I don't know whether that would be balanced enough, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But having said that, Mount really didn't have the best game. So, but what other options would we have in that sort of position? Maybe playing Henderson and then Jude a little bit further forward, potentially. I'm not sure. But for me, I definitely want Foden in that team against Wales starting. And I would love Ben White to be starting at right back and Trippier to swap over to the left instead of Shaw. But I don't think that will happen, unfortunately.
No, I would like that to happen. And I'd like Southgate just to roll the dice a little bit and, practice with a few different players. But as we know, Southgate, he has a team which he likes and he sticks to it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we will see any changes. I'm pretty confident he's going to go with the same team that he's gone with the last two games and then maybe make a tweak here or there. But for the most part, he's going to go with the same system, the same team. But yeah, I would like to see a change, but I can't see it happening.
No.
I've got a couple of questions here, which I think we've already touched on as well, but they're all fairly similar.
Yeah.
One from Chris Farrer saying, why the duck is Southgate not playing Foden? And one from Fraser Sim, who also says, why did Foden not play yesterday, as he's a good locksmith versus teams that play City in the league?
Yeah.
And it just shows you the quality of Phil Foden, really, that everyone's crying out for him to get on the pitch.
He does seem that one player that everyone on social media is sort of asking why isn't he playing?
But I do remember last Euros, everyone was saying the same about Grealish. When Grealish wasn't playing, everyone was crying out for him to start.
Yeah.
And as I said earlier, it's one of those things that it's the player that hasn't been selected for the first 11 is they've almost put on a pedestal to say, well, if this player was playing, then we'd be winning. But it's not always the case, is it?
But I think with the Grealish situation is he's not played well this year for City.
No.
So people aren't really jumping on the bandwagon on that as much. And it's all around form, isn't it? And that's what should be what should be the main consideration when picking the team. Which is why it's so frustrating that players like White aren't in the team. But you could argue Trippier's on playing really well for Newcastle, which he is. So I do get that one. I do get that, but Foden,
he's always been in and around the team anyway, though, hasn't he, Trippier? So
So I completely agree with those questions that Foden should be in this team. And it seems such a waste of talent. I remember at the Euros, he was a lot of fans were saying, in 2 years' time at these World Cups, we're going to have a Phil Foden that's 2 years older and more experienced, and we have that.
But he's on the bench.
So,
oh well.
So it sucks. Okay, I think that's probably enough for today. We've probably rambled on enough here. Just a reminder that if you want to ask us questions in the future, follow us on Twitter, and it's at Arsenal Ramble _. And we'd love to answer those in the best way we can. So thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you on the next one.
Catch you later.